Club 40 Audio presents The Factory.
Where is that constable?
I'll tell you where the constable is, Professor. I can tell you exactly where he is. Hasn't moved since I left him.
And how can you be sure of that?
I'll tell you how. He's dead.
Dead? What's happened? It's the middle of the day. You don't mean to say that the lock...
No, it wasn't the lock whisperer. At least I don't think so. He was in the middle of the road when we found him, coming back from the pig farmer's. He was on foot, and it looks like he tripped and hit his head against a rock. He had this list in his hand.
A short list indeed. But then he was killed in the course of his duty. The pig farmers. That's the second time they've come up. And yet, so far as I know, I have yet to meet them.
They don't come into town much. Scottish folk. Folks aren't exactly openly hostile. They don't like them being around much either. I think it's more on the count of them being able to read than it is their nationality. Folks around here want people as can read in places of government and the church. They aren't altogether fond of common folk flaunting it.
Scottish, indeed. Dorothy, get the horses ready. I think we shall pay a call upon these pig farmers.
We'll have to beware rooks along the way, Professor.
Indeed.
Mary, it would seem we have visitors coming. Put the kettle on.
Twice in one day. My, aren't we high and mighty?
Don't argue with me, woman. This ain't the constable coming around again. This be the professor we heard tell of.
Indeed I am. Professor Marvel, at your service?
Oh, there be no need to be offering your services here, sir. We have no need of them.
Are you so sure of that, sir? You hardly know what I have to offer.
I read your wagon, and we are quite fine with our own remedies here. Mary's herbs do the trick every time. Or nearly so, but thank the good Lord we don't have any ailments that need curing around here today. Of course, I don't mean to be unneighbourly to you. If you have time, we'd be pleased to have you for tea.
We really don't have time for tea.
Of course we have time for tea. I would love to join you and your lovely family for a nice warm cuppa.
Right this way.
Dorothy, you should never refuse tea when it is offered. It is rude, and that's how wars are started.
Leave your boots on the porch, if you will. I'd rather not have mud tracked all over my house.
Ah, the tea smells splendid.
I should say so. My woman knows how to make a good pot of tea now and then. It's the main reason I asked her to marry me.
Humph. You know fine and proper it was me who told you were going to marry me, Mr. McTavish.
Aye, so it was. Now, sir, you were offering me your service. Permit me to do the same in kind. What brings you out here on this stormy afternoon?
Ah, that's very decent of you, sir. In fact, there is something you can do for me. I should like to see your collection of books.
Books? You came all the way from the village to see my books?
More specifically, your children's books. I understand you and your family are people of letters.
Gram ain't no man of letters, much as I've tried to make him one. It were me who reads to the children and teaches them how to read and write.
Aye, 'tis true. My parents were pig farmers, and they were pig farmers before them, and so on. Mary taught herself more or less, wanted to go to college afar off. But they wouldn't have her on account of her being a woman. It's a shame to be sure. But that made it so I could have her, and Oxford lost is my gain, as I see it.
There you go, telling stories again, McTavish. It was never Oxford.
It might have been, me dear. It might have been.
Oh my, the tea is delightful. Don't you think, Dorothy?
Yes, quite excellent.
I need to know if you have any volumes of nursery rhymes in your collection. particularly Whistle Binky, Stories for the Fireside.
The William Miller book. Well, I never. I didn't think anyone knew about that one. 'Tweren't very popular, except where we came from.
Madam, I think you underestimate the scope that book and its sequels will have in years to come. Particularly the verse about the certain boy who uses his bipedal extremities to gallivant through the burrows adorned
What
in
the
a...
Professor means is, have you read the one about Wee Willie Winky?
I was rather on a roll with that one.
Oh, aye, him. The children loves that one. They ask me to read it to them nearly every night.
And are you aware of the current unpleasantness befalling the nearby town?
You mean the murders? Oh, yes, we heard about them, but only by word until today when the young constable came asking questions. He asked how many people in the house could read. I never would have thought that had aught to do with the murders.
Are you aware of the so-called Loch Whisperer and what he says at those keyholes?
Oh, Graham, you don't suppose...
Can't say we are, and we don't want to know.
Did you just try to put me down, McTavish?
No. Mary, no, I simply...
McTavish.
Yes, Mum. My apologies.
Please, continue, madam.
I mean as to ask Master McTavish if he thought the voices in town might have aught to do with the fairies.
Fairies? You mean little people with wings?
Ach, no, you daft girl. Not that. The Down She. The people of the mounds.
People of the mounds, indeed.
Scoff if you like, McTavish, but I have seen him around here with my own 2 eyes.
Pfft. Nonsense. At most you've seen a will-o'-the-wisp or St. Elmo's fire. There's all kinds of gases in the marshlands, Professor. You're liable to see or hear anything in the moors at night.
What exactly have you seen, madam?
I can't rightly say, but I've seen the little figures moving about the farm at night in the shadows. Especially when I read bedtime stories, I could swear I've seen eyes lurking at the windows. But when I look at them directly, they're gone again. And I've heard them whispering so as nobody can make out the words.
Do they seem malicious?
Quite the opposite, in fact. Many's the time when I have said, I have some chore to do in the morning, and when I wake up, I find it already done. The children were in their beds all night, and McTavish never left me side. But I would find some of my most difficult chores already done and waiting for me. Neat as you please.
And before moving to this locality, had you ever seen them before?
No, not once. I tell you, I've never believed in him until we moved here. Since then, there's hardly been a night I haven't seen or heard some evidence of him.
You've been of inestimable value to my investigation.
Your investigation? I thought it was the constable's investigation.
He was assisting me, but now, as he is no longer among the living...
I don't think they'd heard, Professor.
1,000 apologies. It would seem the young man met his end quite by accident. He fell and hit his head on a rock, I'm afraid.
How dreadful. I shall be certain to light a candle for him and his dear mother.
Quite. 'Tis very sad indeed. Before we go, I was wondering if I might inquire as to where your children are at the moment.
You don't think that there is...
No. The constable's death was quite unrelated so far as we can tell. Take my word, you have nothing to fear until nightfall. Now, where are the little dears?
Mary is out in the field picking berries for dessert after supper. And William and Martin are tending to the hogs.
And the sheep?
Sheep?
Yes, the herd of sheep that has been near town all this week. I imagine you have the children guide them up into the hills and then shepherd them back home during the evenings?
We ain't got no sheep out here, Professor. Nor does anyone around here. So far as we know, nearest sheep farm is nearly 5 miles away.
Curious. And who is shepherding them, I wonder?
Might just be a parcel of wild roaming sheep.
You are forgetting your reading, Dorothy. All we like sheep are gone astray. Sheep don't generally stay together without a shepherd.
That's one reason I prefer pigs. Pigs stick together more likely or not. That, and you can't just throw a fence or two around them and slop them around time to time, long as they don't rut their way out. You don't have to move them from pasture to pasture like sheep.
This has all been quite informative, and we thank you for your hospitality. Dorothy, have you finished your tea?
Just now, Professor.
Then we must be going. We have a great deal to do before nightfall.
It was a pleasure having some company for once, Professor.
Aye, especially a man of learning.
We thank you, folks. And, Mary, would you really like to attend a college?
I don't know if it's feasible now, what with the farm and the children. Why?
Well, I just happen to know of a college for ladies that will be starting up soon. Would you mind me passing your address along to a friend of mine? She's very well connected and might be able to arrange a scholarship for you.
That would be a marvellous thing. Most marvellous, Professor.
Very well. I shall do as promised, and assuming all goes well, you should expect a response by the end of the month. Dorothy, would you be so good as to remind me to post a letter to Lady Stanley of Alderley?
Of course, Prof.
Good day to you all, and mind that you have the children in bed after sundown.
Thank ye, Professor. We will. He was a strange one, was he not, McTavish? McTavish?
Aye. That he was. Strange as the day is long. Nice, though.
Where are we off to, Professor?
To the fields just outside of town. I want to inspect that flock of sheep.
But a flock of sheep? It's just a bunch of sheep. What would that have to do with the Loch Whisperer?
The Loch Whisperer? Perhaps nothing. The thing that killed those 6 men? Perhaps quite a lot.
I don't understand.
Where is the best place to hide a needle?
What?
Answer the question.
I don't know. A haystack?
A needle in a haystack would be difficult. But a specific needle in a haystack-sized pile of needles, that would be nearly an impossible job. Yes?
Yes.
There are many strange and wonderful things on this planet, Dorothy. Here alone, there are flowers that look like birds, to scare off animals that might trample them down. There are insects that camouflage themselves to look like plant life, so that they won't be eaten by birds. There are fish in the ocean that cover themselves with sand, and lie in wait for some unsuspecting smaller fish to come along, so that the big fish may enjoy a nice dinner.
So you think that this thing that's attacking people looks like a sheep?
Perhaps. From a distance, if you don't get too close. It may be able to look like multiple creatures. Sheep just happen to be the most convenient. It may be that when it arrived, the first person it came upon was a shepherd or two, keeping watch over their flocks by night.
Arrived? You don't mean to say that you think this thing and the Loch Whisperer come from up there?
Nothing is more probable. I have spent a great deal of time in the northern hemisphere, and I've never read nor heard of any creature on this planet that can generate enough electric shock to turn a man into dust. Stop his heart? Surely. But to completely electrolyze every inch of a man and separate him into his base elements? It seems to me that something like that could only be extraterrestrial. It is certainly not native, let alone common, to this sceptred isle. Still, there are more things in earth than are dreamt of, let alone in heaven. Little boy blue, come blow your horn. The sheep's in the meadow, the cows are in the corn. And where's the boy who watches the sheep? He's out picking flowers with little Bo Peep.
Don't you mean he's under the hay bale fast asleep?
But in that sleep of death, what dreams may come?
Do you really think there's a dead sheep farm around somewhere?
Of the two options, I much prefer to think that he's neglected his duties and run off with the little girl who has lost her sheep and doesn't know where to find them. But the odds of it are not high. My guess would be that the shepherd of this flock was one of the creature's first victims, and that somewhere between here and the farm McTavish mentioned, there is a pile of non-conductive dust.
Wouldn't you think the creature would be far from here resting, being that it's daylight?
What do I think, and what do I hope? I hope he's not here, hibernating in diurnal bliss. But if I didn't think he was nearby, I wouldn't have bothered to come out and examine the flock, now would I?
All right, Professor. What exactly are we looking for?
If I knew that, I would have told you as much. The best we can do is examine each of these sheep individually and look for something that tells us what we are up against.
Brilliant. Hey, sheep! Do any of you happen to be alien monsters or shape-shifting cryptids from the dawn of time? If you are, would you mind pointing out the one that is? Thanks very much.
Why didn't I think of that?
Worth a shot. You never know.
Unless it is a pseudo-intelligent creature that recognizes words like alien and monster, then it is decidedly not worth a shot.
Yeah, you don't think it could be?
I highly doubt it. Whatever this creature is, its needs and actions seem more animalistic than sentient to me. A predator stalking its prey in the jungle. Not a hunter out for sport or recreation. The Loch Whisperer, on the other hand...
Why wouldn't he eat sheep?
I beg pardon?
Why wouldn't this creature turn the sheep into dust? I mean, they've got to have just as much moisture and electro thingamabobs in a human would, right?
It's possible he did at first, but then he found something tastier. It happens in the wild quite a bit. Lions get a taste for man flesh, and then they don't want anything else. Did I ever tell you about the time I helped with the man-eaters of Savo? Everyone thought it was a couple of lions eating the workers, but the truth turned out to be even more horrifying. In reality...
I'd rather not hear that right now, if it's all the same to you, Prof. Not when we've got our own man-eater to deal with.
Quite so, quite so. A man-eater and a Loch Whisperer. The people of the mounds.
How's that, Gov?
Mary McTavish said that the creatures around her farm had been there at least since they came. As far as I could tell, they've been farming that land for years. And our man-eater has only been around for about 4 weeks. The people of the mounds, she called them. That's usually the Scottish way of talking about pixies and elves, but yet it's also been used to discuss spirits of the dead or creatures from another realm. A parallel dimension. And if the Loch Whisperer is one, or even a number of these fair folk, then they were here for quite some time before the beast we are hunting. I've been assuming until now that the two were connected. An alien race that was transporting some sort of beast from one planet to another, or perhaps they were even using it to power a transport. A spaceship, if you will, like a sort of living generator. But what if that's not the case at all? What if the only connection is that this thing landed where they happened to be? And now one of these creatures from a parallel dimension is doing its best to warn us.
If they were from a parallel dimension and they've crossed over to ours somehow, then the dimensions are no longer parallel. Parallel lines never connect.
An astute observation. We shall have to come up with a better term. Not everything needs to be as complicated as we make it. Maybe this has been going on for centuries.
You don't mean to say that you really believe in fairies and leprechauns and little people flitting around with wings that fall down dead when you say you don't believe in them?
Not to that level, perhaps. It may be that these creatures aren't interdimensional at all. It may be they have some sort of natural camouflage, something that makes them hard to see at night. The only way to know any of this for sure is to capture one, or at least sit down and converse with it. But there may be the truth behind the legend.
Well, Prof, I've looked at 98 sheep so far. Surprisingly, it is starting to make me sleepy. Isn't there some better way of... Prof?
Yes, Dorothy?
How common is it for a sheep to be born with 6 legs?
Not common at all, so far as I know. Among sheep, you're far more likely to find one that is two-headed than one with an extra appendage or two. And they rarely live to adulthood. Sheep are particularly apt to have such birth defects, however. Something to do with breeding, I'd imagine.
And, how many are likely to have somewhat human face with tentacles rather than a snout?
I don't imagine such a disfigured creature would be able to survive very long as a sheep. It would probably... Oh, dear.
Yeah, thought you might catch on. It's right over there, and I think he knows we've noticed him.
Dorothy,
Yes, Professor?
I think it would be most advantageous for us to run!
Professor!
Run, Dorothy! Run! I realize you want this to sound realistic, but was it actually necessary to have us run a marathon being chased by that creature? What? What's that? A cliffhanger? A cliffhanger? I don't recall any cliffs around there. Give me an umbrella and a sturdy pole, and I'll show you a cliffhanger, my boy. Oh, what? Read? Not again. Are you serious? You want me to read credits after that? Fine. All right. I'll do it. You've been listening to The Factory. In The Lock Whisperer Part 3, the part of Dorothy was played by Miss Kendra Akers. The part of the Mayor was played by Jack Ward. The part of McTavish was played by Cletus McConville. The part of Mary was played by Emily McIntosh. With... oh no, not him again. Wesley Critchfield as Professor Marvel. Pompous windbag. The Lock Whisperer is an original story written, produced, edited, and directed for Club 40 Audio by... No, I'm not saying his name one more time. No, I will not do it. No, thank you. No. All music used during this program is rights-free and does not require accreditation. There was music? I didn't hear any music. But scene changes? Scene changes? There were scenes in this? Seems seamless to me. All right, fine. You know all this stuff by now. If they don't know by now, they don't care. I mean, subscribe, ring the bell, give us likes on Facebook, and keep up with everything Club 40 Audio. Listen to SoundCloud and read more on Tumblr. You know they're missing an E there. Does anybody know this? Has the English language completely gone to pot since I've been... Fine. Don't forget to support us by buying this and every episode for pay $1 or what you like at club40audio.bandcamp.com. That's club 40audio.bandcamp.com. Why is that one person snickering every time I mention Bandcamp? And please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. A Patreon? There's that extra E. I knew there was an extra E floating around somewhere. The Factory is a production of Club 40 Audio. All rights are reserved. But what about the rights of that little girl?